There is the theory of the Mobius. A twist in the fabric of space where time becomes a loop, 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 where time becomes a loop. Where time becomes a loop, time becomes a loop, time becomes a loop. Where time becomes a loop, time becomes a loop.
No power in the verse can stop me.
What's going on, guys? My name is El De Niro and welcome to episode 12 of the Midnight Hour. Today we're going to be talking about the paranormal. This was suggested to us by Big Blue 1331, who listed us like a lot of topics to talk about, and it was pretty useful. So if any of you guys want to suggest anything that we can talk about, leave a comment in the comment section naturally, or put it on a postcard or fax it to us or whatever, and we'll do our best to look into them. Also, the Ask FM link will be in the description this time, where if you want to ask us a question for any future episode that we may do as a Q&A, that's where you go to do that type of thing. But anyways, the paranormal is this kind of blanket term that comprises any experience lying outside the range of scientific explanation. So it's like the normal, but not so normal. It usually deals with things like ghosts and aliens and cryptids and all that fun stuff. We're just going to be talking about certain cases or certain unexplained phenomena, or giving our own... like, it's really hard for us to give our opinions on this as best we can, because me and Jack are both so skeptical about everything. Should have mentioned, by the way, the co-host is Jack, but you already knew that anyway.
Yeah, I'd assume so by now.
Yeah, why don't you tell us that you're always here?
I'm always here.
Oh, that was brilliant. I love
Yeah, thanks. I really try. I really tried really hard with that one.
So we'll start off talking about ghosts, because it's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about the paranormal. I think usually they can be religion based, or sometimes the people who are experiencing the haunting side of things come up with their own theories about what it is. Jack has an amazing one that we just can't wait to talk about because it's terrifyingly hilarious.
Yeah. We've kind of spent the last half an hour before we started this little podcast just googling around, finding our favourite ones, because we don't plan these particularly well. We generally get in a Skype call and then try and just Google our way through the whole episode. That's
pretty much a trade secret right there.
But this one is probably one of my favourite ones that I came across, and it's about a painting, and if that's not scary enough for you, it gets worse. It was being sold on eBay, right, and it was listed by some anonymous eBay seller in 2000, and they listed this painting by an artist called Bill Stoneham, called The Hands Resist Him. And it's a painting of a little boy in front of a window with like a doll, a girl, the shoulder height doll girl thing.
I think the doll is the creepiest part of this whole thing. She looks like a weirdo.
It gets creepier. According to this couple that bought the painting off of a Hollywood actor or something along those lines, they claim that the figures in the painting move around at night and sometimes disappear from the canvas entirely. Ooh, yeah. Ooh. Now, that's some Harry Potter shit right there.
Yeah, I'm terrified already.
Yeah, and people claiming that they felt sick while looking at it. They felt like unseen hands were grabbing them. They felt like they had a hot blast of hot air in the face. And one person claimed that their brand new printer ate and mutilated page after page when they tried to download images of the painting. Now, if you can't, and I personally, I've never had a problem getting a printer to work perfectly, and I don't know anybody. Printers are well known for being a hallmark of reliability.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They are the most perfect creation. Were they ranked the greatest invention of all time because of their perfect ability to work?
I think so, yeah. I mean, they perfected the printer so well that they moved on to printing in a whole new dimension.
That's right,
into
yeah.
3D printing, yeah.
That's the truth of
But
it. So basically...
yeah, basically this guy, it's a creepy painting, and people get a bit ill while looking at it. I'm getting a bit sick of looking at it, but you know, I feel that way with most paintings.
If I got terrified every time my printer jammed, I would be living a life confined to a cell somewhere, because printers don't fucking work ever. And that's pretty much the most solid piece of information that they have for like this proof of a haunting or whatever is printer didn't work, man.
Yeah,
crazy.
We're both way too skeptical to assume that there's any actual paranormal forces at work here, other than people going, oh, so you say that you can feel things when you look at this painting? Oh, let me look at it. Oh my god, I can feel it too. I'm assuming that there's just... I would like to believe that the people that own this painting have a really bad idea of what sarcasm is, and that all of their friends and everyone that's been to see this painting has just been really fucking sarcastic with them.
I love the almost poetic personification of the printer. Like, the printer didn't jam. Like, that's not what happened. Oh no, the printer ate and mutilated page after page. Like, you know, you could simplify that sentence and say, fucking printer didn't work. I had to smack it a few times and then get someone who knows how to use a printer in to get it to work. But instead it ate and mutilated these pages, like, taking no victim. Well, you don't take victims. Taking no prisoners. And like, it's just hilarious. It's just hilarious.
Oh.
That's pretty much the way that we've observed almost every poltergeist incident so far. We'll move on from the haunted eBay painting of Derby and move into the Thornton Road poltergeist. Now, as you can tell by my tone, this is serious shit right here. The Wikipedia page for this particular poltergeist comprises 2 sentences, and it refers to a stone throwing incident in a residential area of Birmingham. This was in 1981. I'll actually read the entire Wikipedia article right now. This is how good I am. In 1981, Ward End residents at Thornton Road told police they could not locate the source of stones being thrown that were causing significant damage to windows and roof tiles. Chief Inspector Len Turley investigated, saying his team went to great lengths to catch the individual or individuals responsible. Officers camped outside overnight and reportedly employed night sights, image intensifiers and automatic cameras, but failed to find the source of the stone throwing, prompting some writers to ascribe the incident to a poltergeist. This is like some young hoodlums threw stones at my house, couldn't find them, it's a ghost. How do you jump from like the obvious source of it to it being a ghost? How does that happen?
I like the fact that the Chief Inspector of Police investigated, saying a team went to great lengths.
Yeah.
Not 1 or 2 officers, a team. That suggests
it was
4
him
or
and
5,
Bill Murray and some other guys.
What actually happened was that he went, kids are throwing stones at the houses again. These people won't take that as an answer. Fucking hell, here we go.
Alright lads, how do you fancy going camping?
Who fancies a night in the squad car at the end of the road with a pack of beer? Like, that's what that is. Let's be honest.
You know what the likely source of the stones is? That it was the 80s, right? Technology wasn't that cutting edge, so somebody probably thought that a 2D printer was a 3D one, and they tried to print some stones, and the printer jammed and started throwing the stones out in all sorts of directions that caused damage to the houses.
That is the only logical explanation.
It's more fucking logical than it being a poltergeist, in all honesty.
Yeah, that's true.
It's ridiculous.
But I can't imagine Birmingham, or this part of Birmingham, Ward End, in 1981 being particularly interesting for any hoodlums.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all know. I want to know what... You mentioned image intensifiers.
Yeah, and night
sights. What is an image intensifier?
Like, I don't know, it was the 80s, so it's probably just a camera.
Yeah, I'm imagining it's a guy with binoculars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably exactly that.
Anyway, moving on to something genuinely scary.
Yeah. We're not fucking around this
This
time.
is the story of a poltergeist in Coventry. Reportedly, his name is Jim. Jim the poltergeist. And this was revealed...
Hold on, if that's not terrifying enough.
This was revealed when they had celebrity TV ghostbuster Derek Ackra round, armed with more crystals, salt, cleansing prayers, and a film crew who claimed it was all down to a very angry man called Jim, who once lived in this spot and died of a heart attack aged 58. So, Jim, the I'm sorry, like, you can't claim that a poltergeist is called Jim and expect people to go, that is terrifying.
Unless he explicitly tells you that his name is Jim.
Yeah, unless his name is like Jim, child murdering, axe wielding, serial rapist, something.
That's not funny. I just laughed.
unless that's his name, Jim isn't terrifying. Like, he's just an old bloke who died.
Yeah.
And this is reported not even shortly. This is reported at, I would say, some length, but. And admittedly, it is the Daily Mail. So
without a hint of irony as well.
Yeah, and it's all as if this is genuine terror that this poor family has experienced. They've included a picture of some spoons that are on the kitchen floor. Well, if that doesn't prove that Jim...
Case closed.
Yeah, case closed. Jim the poltergeist, everybody.
I like, the way you said there, it was on some TV show where it happened.
Yeah.
That reminds me, did you ever watch that Danny Dyer takes on UFOs, that thing? That was
no, but I sound like I'm going to have to find it.
It was on BBC Three, and it was just basically Danny Dyer walking around a field going, alright, you fucking alien mugs, let's have it! And it was just that, like, there was never any concrete proof behind it, and that's the stupid level of, like, television reporting for starters, and then the journalists from in fairness now, the Daily Mail is a piece of significant importance in terms of publication. They are widely reported to produce only ever facts when dealing with certain things, and they don't use any racism or misogyny or homophobia or Islamophobia, so they're pretty much a solid publication.
They're golden.
Yeah.
This is you saying about the Danny Dyer thing has actually just reminded me of something. This is slightly off topic, but I think it's an interesting story to tell. I've made a short film for my course this year called Friday Night. It's basically about three guys that go into... they're on a night out and they stumble into an abandoned hotel. Basically they get caught in like a time loop kind of paradox thing, and time repeats itself and bad things start to happen to them, and then they repeat back on themselves and all that kind of good stuff. And this one guy, we filmed it in Stoke, and this one guy was he was from Stoke, and he insisted that he put on a London accent, and I have a London accent. His London accent was, "Whoa, fucking Gordon Bennett, oh, geezer." It was genuinely Danny Dyer. Like, I've never heard a better Danny Dyer impression than this guy, and it was awful. Like, we discussed it with our lecturers and stuff like that, and went through it with them, and they were like, we were joking around with them. They were going, "You should just make a whole film with Danny Dyer as every character." I'd watch it. Like, just with Danny Dyer just in paranormal situations.
Danny Dyer gets caught in a time loop, and then he comes back into himself, and there's like 4 Danny Dyers on the screen, and they all in sync, in perfect rhythm, say,
"What the fuck is this shit?" Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
It's really hard to do a London accent. Like, it's easy enough to do a basic English accent, or like what American people would just describe as a British accent. Just a broad interpretation of an English accent. But the London one...
Especially the Queen's English.
The Queen's English, yeah. But the London one's so hard. Like, I try and do it every now and then, and I just end up finding myself saying, "Fucking blimey," and stuff like that.
Like, reverting back to that kind of like early 19... Like, the older... Everyone's wearing fucking dungarees and a flat cap. "Gordon Bennett, governor, fucking hell."
It's like sometimes I try and like like the way that I usually do accents is to copy other people, and I try and copy yours, and I just can't. Like it's like the best way to do an accent is to copy certain sentences that people say, and I can't. Like when you say flag, you say like flag, and I just can't do that. Like you fucking slag.
You fucking slag.
But luckily,
it just rolls off the tongue.
I have an accent that nobody can imitate, really. So there's that.
Moving on to even more meaningful.
It's like, well, accents are scientifically unexplained, so that is definitely paranormal.
Definitely, yep, poltergeists.
The next one, like, the more I think about it, the more I actually don't even want to talk about it, but it's along the same vein of the previous tree in that it is spooky as fuck, you guys. It's from a Daily Mail article, and it says, "My haunting goes on. Couple sell house plagued by ghost of Titanic captain who was born there. And it even had a flooded kitchen, eh? If that's not..." Essentially, this is a couple who were definitely not media hungry, and they reported, ghostly sightings and spooky goings on. So that's pretty specific and pretty in depth. That's undeniable, irrefutable evidence of ghosts appearing at this property. It's just bullshit, all of it. Like, there's nothing even in this article apart from the spooky goings on bit, and then a little bit of history about the captain of the Titanic, and then that's pretty much it. Like, there's a quote from the guy who says, "I had a sinking feeling," and just, I mean, come on, like just stop it.
It's just that is a wonderful pun. That is, I feel like I should really actually have read this article just to try and pick out any of the puns.
I know. It's so, like, my interest in things like this just deflates so much when you read how ridiculous it is. Like, I tried really hard to keep an open mind when discussing things about ghosts, because this is only the start of it. It will get more serious, genuinely it will, but ghosts in particular, just, there's no way I can look at this with an open mind, because it's kind of just, I don't know, it's not actually possible, really, is it? Like, there's no, I've never had a ghostly experience or anything like that. I had one particular story from when I was younger, and I downloaded the Exorcist theme music from LimeWire. I was sitting in my house by myself. It was night, my mum was working late. We had the gate at the side of the house locked with 2 wheelie bins and a cinder block in front of it, because the dog was getting out, and like he'll chase cars and run away, and we don't like that. So I started listening to the Exorcist music, and I heard thunder and lightning, heavy rain, and a loud bang, and I went around the side of the house to look at what it was, and the wind had blown the wheelie bins over and the cinder block, and the door was open, and like, I was terrified at that moment. I was like 13 or 14, but it's explainable. It was just heavy wind. It was just banter. No, it was just heavy wind, and that's just what happened, and it just coincided with me listening to some terrifying piece of music. It's highly unlikely that ghosts choose to appear at particularly scary times when it's nighttime, when it's thunder and lightning and all of these things that are used by movie directors to bring a sense of foreboding, and into, that's what it is. It's a device to make you aware of the fact that something is awry in a movie, and that's why people think that it happens in real life. Like, I think that's the easiest way to explain it. There was another thing about low frequency noises that lead to this sinking feeling, and they lead to this dread and panic. Specifically, a sound between 7 and 19. HZ is hertz, right?
Hertz, yeah.
Between 7 and 19 hertz. It's just a sound. Researchers tested this at concerts, and they sneaked sounds like that into the acoustics at concerts, and they reported and interviewed members of the audience who reported feelings of dread and fear and panic, and that's just what it is. Like, there's an easy explanation to be found for all things to do with ghosts, in my opinion. Another thing that always comes into play is sleep paralysis, where that's a legitimate thing that happens to people. They don't see a legitimate ghost. It's a legitimate, like, is it like a hallucination?
It's like they're just dreams that you kind of see when you're awake, basically. So yeah, hallucination is probably the best way to describe it. Yeah,
it's a sort of a state between semi-sleep and semi-waking, and that's just the way that it happens. So ghosts, we tried to give you a chance, but you didn't really impress us enough. So
all ghost stories seem to just be grounded in strong sense of coincidence and
Yeah.
ridiculousness, if you ask me.
Another thing as well, to like, me and Jack were saying this earlier as we were looking at cases, that oftentimes in famous ghost cases on the internet, if you read the Wikipedia page, the criticisms and the skeptics sections are far more vast than the actual description, and that just tells you in itself
Everything you need to know.
Yeah, that's just, it is what it is. Like, I think a lot of people just want to believe in certain phenomena, maybe for reasons like they want to believe someone's visiting them, or maybe they just I don't really know. I don't know people's intentions, but it's questionable and sketchy, and that's at best. At worst, it is non-existent and things that people have made up.
Yeah. Shall we move on to something that's actually a little bit creepier?
Yes.
This is the Borley Rectory. It's a Victorian mansion that gained fame as the most haunted house in England. It was built in 1862 to house the rector of the parish of Borley and his family. It was badly damaged in a fire in 1939 and demolished in 1944. Basically, there's quite a long list of alleged sightings and paranormal events that occurred around, a couple of years after it was built. Unexplained footsteps. The rector died, and the next reverend that came in, the wife was cleaning the cupboard and came across the skull of a young woman.
Yeah, there were exorcisms performed at the house as well, which doesn't help. There was also there was infidelity going on there. It was, it was like a 1920, like, I don't know, like a Victorian era version of Hollyoaks. I guess. They had a seance and all, like, and there was murders and crazy things went on over the course of many years. Yeah,
and there was a point in the this is all can easily be found on the Wikipedia page. One of the big things was the reports multiplied suddenly in 1929 after the Daily Mirror published an account of a visit by a paranormal researcher. Like, that kind of explains a lot behind almost like the psychology of people that do see or experience these happenings, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Someone claims it to be haunted, and then all of a sudden people would start seeing, things, or quote unquote seeing things anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing, like, a place can be perceived to be haunted by many people, but once it gets reported in the media, it will suddenly become infinitely more haunted than it was before. And again, that's just, I don't know if it's a combination of this sort of bandwagon mentality or a group of people who just want to believe, or what makes it so, but they get so much more popular. Obviously they get popular once they get acclaim in the media and things like that, but they get more sightings and they get more crazy activity being reported, and it's just, you can see that there's definitely a psychology that's gone into that rather than it being haunted,
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is fairly interesting. You mentioned the seance that they did. One of them someone made contact with two spirits, one of which was a young nun who identified herself as this French nun, and she was revealed to have left her religious order and travelled to England to marry a member of the family that owned the Borleys 17th century manor house.
Yeah.
And she was said to have been murdered in an earlier building on the site of the rectory. That kind of stuff. I mean, today, if someone said that to me, like, today, I would just assume that they had Googled a little bit about it and gone, alright, cool, I can say this and build almost like a believable story around it, as it were.
Yeah, I think it like, while it's easy to dismiss a lot of the things that make it what it is, it's still a creepy place. Now, it doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't for the last 70 years, which is correct maths from me. Boom.
Yeah, it is actually.
So if you were to go there now, and let's say it did exist, you would definitely feel a sense of disconcertion, because just because of the fact that you know the history of it and you know that strange things happen there. Not strange things in the paranormal sense, but strange things like, I think a seance is a pretty strange thing. I think an exorcism is a strange thing. And obviously murder and, well, infidelity doesn't really bother me. That probably happens in most households, but just things like that. It was destroyed by a fire in 1841, and it was... well, that was the initial ground it was built on, was destroyed by a fire in 1841.
Yeah.
And I think there was another fire after that as well.
Yeah, 1939.
Yeah, that's the one from an oil lamp. So it has a history of being a creepy place, and there's probably definitely some kind of energy that you could perceive to feel. Like, energy and all that stuff, I don't really know where. I believe that people can feel some form of energy, but I believe it's formed in the mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it's not paranormal because it's explainable.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's influenced by people's previous knowledge of the place. Like, I doubt if you took someone that didn't know where they were going there and just walked them around it, it's going, you know, and you're talking about it, you know, going to them, oh yeah, it's nice here, isn't it? And they'll probably just be like, yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Whereas if you kind of told them, you know, got them to read in depth about it, and, you know, like, almost tried to convince them about it and then took them there, they'd probably have a much different reaction.
Yeah, it's just perception. Like, if we were out in the pub and you saw a guy and you said he's a cunt, I'd just believe that he's a cunt because you said it. But if you told me he was a nice guy, I'd believe he was a nice guy. Like, and you approach it with different
mentalities.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way that it works.
I do like to kind of think that, I mean, you know, you hear a lot about these places where it's kind of like, it moves on, you know, not generation to generation, but, you know, it goes through series of owners where people die, or, you know, people get murdered, and they're like just like specific murder houses. And I like this is weird to say I like the idea of, but you know, I'm kind of in favour of the idea that there are the kind of people that are going to kill someone are drawn to the houses that other people have killed people in.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
That is a strange thing. I like, without trying to shoehorn him into every podcast, Trent Reznor recorded the Downward Spiral. Was it the Downward Spiral? It could have been Pretty Hate Machine. Either way, he recorded one of his albums from the house that Sharon Tate was murdered in by the Manson family. And he called the studio La Pig because they carved the pig out of her blood or whatever. And that's, you know, it's weird because Trent Reznor's music in the 90s was disconcerting and it was dangerous and stuff, and it happens to have been born in a place where, you know, murders happened and really bad things happened, and that's sort of, I don't know, it all kind of ties into that idea, you know. Should we move on to the next one? This is not so much about the paranormal. Now, there have been reported incidents of hauntings all the way through the 19th century or something like that in this place, but this place is more about the atmosphere to do with it and the energy that we spoke about just then, talking about the Borley Rectory. This is known as the Aokigahara. Again, I can't pronounce it. It's called the Jukai. It's the Suicide Forest, or the Sea of Trees. This is a place in Japan. It's a forest at the base of Mount Fuji, and the fact that it's near Mount Fuji means it's obviously on volcanic ground, which makes it's really dense, and it has volcanic ground, so it's really hard to dig into. But when you're in there, in the actual forest, you can't really hear much that goes on outside it. It's very quiet, it's very eerie. And that's not why it's eerie as such. That contributes to it, but this is a forest that's popular for suicides. It's where most of the people in Japan... Well, no, that's not true, but if there was ever a place where most people have committed suicide, it was this place. There's been... I don't know, per year they have hundreds of suicides in this place. They go on a body hunt every year to drag bodies out of there, and they find bodies, and they, you know, if you go to certain areas of the forest, you're likely to find empty packages of paracetamol or whatever people use to overdose on these days. You'll find nooses hung from the trees and things. There are signs outside it that say, do not go to this place, or seek help, you know, think about your family, things like that, to discourage people from committing suicide. And it's gained this notoriety for being a place where people go to commit suicide, and I think that, combined with the volcanic activity around it and the fact that makes it all eerie, that just adds to this. It's a quintessential haunted area in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, look back through almost any cultures that are surrounded by, you know, actual volcanic activity, and volcanoes do have a lot to do with, religious kind of religious kind of happenings, and volcanoes are grounded in this big mystique and a lot of mythology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And obviously Japanese culture is deeply ingrained with a hell of a lot of culture that potentially we don't really completely understand, as it were.
Yeah, I know in Japan suicide is this really bad thing to do.
Yeah, like, it's a big dishonourment, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So the fact that they have this place almost allocated where no one is likely to find them again until it's too late or whatever, it's sort of it adds this, like, I don't want to say mystique, but it adds this sort of, I don't know, it emphasizes the eeriness and the I want to use a word like profound, but I know it's such a difficult subject, but it's an interesting place, I think.
Yeah, I think what really interested me it struck me when you were talking about they do the body hunt. Body hunt on the Wikipedia page is in quotation marks, and I know that's probably to do with the fact that a body hunt isn't a actual proper phrase, as it were.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that you could say it's like a body hunt, as in a hunt is something where you go to find something maybe that that might not exist. Say you're hunting for treasure, you're hunting for something that might not really be there.
Yeah.
This, they know there's people that they know there's people going to be there. There's 100+ people, that commit suicide there a year.
Yeah.
It's not a hunt; it's a retrieval process.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that, I don't know why that struck me when you were talking about that, but
no, it is. That was
really, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
like,
it is. Yeah, that's it's bleak, isn't it? It's real grim.
Yeah, it's pretty morbid.
Yeah, but it's that place. I don't know. It's always fascinated me. The thing about it is, if you actually, I wouldn't recommend googling it because not safe for work. You're going to see corpses, but the images of the forest itself, it's beautiful. Like it's a really profound piece of nature. Like it's really nice, and I imagine it'd be a great, like, if it had any other thing associated with it, it would be a place with a sense of so much profoundness and this serenity. Serenity. Yes,
serenity is probably the best word. I mean, it does look. I mean, they say that due to the density of the trees, there's no wind noise, there's no wildlife. It's just quiet.
Yeah, it's just it's isolated. It's alone. It's
which I suppose when you're trying to commit suicide, that's probably why it's gained this notoriety for suicide victims, is kind of this quiet serenity, kind of the peaceful place for them to die.
Yeah, and you can see why that would be perceived to be a haunted place because of the fact that it is not very natural in the sense that it's not like a normal forest anyway.
No, yeah.
And it's surrounded by corpses, so like I'd say if you spent the night there, you wouldn't sleep. You would feel you'd have that feeling where it's like an eye is watching you, that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think, but people can say that that's the spirits of other people, kind of living, or the people that have died there. But I think really all that it is it's this kind of knowledge that you're staying, or you're in a place where people go and willingly kill themselves.
Yeah.
It's a place where maybe even for us that we don't really believe in the whole kind of ghosts things. We've just been mocking the idea of ghosts for the beginning part of this podcast, but there is that kind of sense that you're surrounded by trees that people have hung themselves from, in a part of the world that probably has the most densely populated suicide rate.
Yeah, you're talking about an area that just has a lot of soul attached to it in that way. It's hard to really come up with words for it, isn't it? Because you're kind of describing a thing
a very unique circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought I'd throw that in there. That forest has always interested me, and thinking about the paranormal and things, people get so hung up about ghosts and all of these stories, and I think this is a thing that happens to humans every year, and this deserves more attention than ghosts and stupid Titanic captains sinking and flooding people's kitchens and stuff. It's just like I don't know, people should just get real and just discuss things like this a little more. I'm not trying to sound holier than thou when I say that. I'm just saying that if you want to go down the route with the paranormal, I think that this forest holds as much interest from that part of the brain that the paranormal does, and it deserves attention for that reason, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, just one thing that really kind of gets to me and annoys me with in terms of ghosts is, why is it that they're always bad? You know, why are they always trying to avenge something? You know, they're trying to, they're trying to annoy and, you know, unsettle people of, you know, the current time.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, you know,
why don't they just shut up and go to sleep?
Yeah. Why don't you ever get like stories of, you know, the Casper the Friendly Ghost type deal? You know.
In fairness, it's like the whole idea of coming back from the dead to avenge something is so badass. Like the movie The Crow, where a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead, but sometimes people have so much unrest within them that they have to come back, and then Eric Draven comes back and kills a bunch of people, and everyone should watch The Crow. It's awesome. It's based on a true story as well. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
The next one that we have is to do with lights in the sky. Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. But you know, there's plenty of. You can pretty much Google, and we did this just before we started. Unexplained lights in, and
insert
then just
city
list.
here.
Yeah, insert city, country, province, town, whatever you want here, and something will come up. But one of the more famous ones is the Marfa lights, which is also known as the Marfa ghost lights, which are near the US Route 67 in Texas, in obviously the United States. If I need to really add that bit on the end, then you've got some serious problems.
I thought you meant the English Texas.
No, yeah, my bad. Basically, these have been going on for the last 50 or so years, and 57 years. Yeah, that's right.
That's exactly right.
Nope. 57. Yes, maths is good. God, we're awful at this.
We are terrible. Why do you people listen to us?
I know.
What do you mean, you people?
You know, that they've gained fame as kind of, you know, the idea of paranormal phenomena as ghosts or UFOs or, you know, that kind of thing's kind of been reported to float, you know, about head height, or, you know, all the way up to, you know, a couple of miles into the sky, just bobbing around in the darkness.
All up in the sky's grill.
All up in the sky, yeah. I don't know why I phrased it that way.
I know, when you were like all up in people's grills, biatch.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't say that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry that I said it. I'll try and be a better person. The lights are said to often appear in pairs or groups, and they divide and merge, disappear, reappear. You know, they seem to move in regular patterns, and they're about the size of a football or a basketball. And you know, you get reports of them about 10 or 20 times a year, and there's no reliable reports of daytime sightings. So they're near a motorway. They're often in pairs, and they seem to move in regular patterns. They're never in the daytime. Ghosts. I can't think of any other logical explanation apart from ghosts. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You're fired. Get off my show. But yeah, it's like, it also actually just happens to take place near an army airfield, which should not surprise anybody. Although I think it's deactivated or decommissioned at this time. But there's like a mad standing platform in Marfa where you can stand to watch the Marfa lights, and it's become a sort of a tourist attraction for whatever reason. Well, obviously it's obvious what the reason is, but there's plenty of explanations to deal with this, albeit very difficult for us to explain. I think the lights are a kind of a mirage that are caused by sharp temperature gradients between cold and warm layers of air, and this is referenced on a Wikipedia page where you can click and read exactly how that works. And again, I think the reason that people want to believe something more to this is because it's just such a boring explanation, and it's really like, you know, like most people aren't going to know that a mirage can be caused by that. I didn't know that, but it's just dull, isn't it? Like, you want it to be something else, and for it to be something else, I don't know, it just implies that there's more going on, and it just makes it more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's the full possibility that it could just it could be a natural phenomenon of light, but most likely, if it is a mirage, I'm thinking it's more like a reflection or a distortion of light from headlights or street lights, or car headlights from the motorway being reflected and kind of changed almost.
Yeah, I'd say that too.
These cold and warm layers of air. That's the most easily explainable way of.
Having said that, though, it does go back to times when there weren't really a lot of cars on the road.
Yeah, so that's what I was just thinking, actually, when after I said that, because I mean, it goes back to the 1950s, and it's still happening now.
Yeah. Which
does that completely destroy the idea that they are just car headlights, or?
I'd probably say it does, but we still have an explanation. In like, what I don't understand is that the people who will say either it isn't car headlights or it isn't this the change in temperature or causing some kind of mirage. Like, what is it? Like, what do you want it to be? I guess that, like, it could be something that we literally don't know anything about. Like, to do with like, I don't know, another dimension or a wormhole or something like that, but it's not. It's just, it is caused by a mirage, or a mirage-like effect. It's not technically a mirage, isn't it? Because not everybody has the same mirage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's
well,
just an
mirage. Yeah, mirage is generally kind of the idea of. The kind of the mirage in the desert kind of idea.
Actually,
that's the kind of most common.
If you've ever driven down a road that has bumps in it in the sun, sometimes when you come up to a part where the road sort of you come off of a plateau to drive down, you can see like water in the road, but then you get there and the water disappears and it's no longer.
Yeah.
That's a mirage-like thing.
Yeah.
So it could just be the exact same type of effect, except it's caused by a sharp temperature drop, because it's in the middle of like an open space where there is likely to be sharp temperature drops. Like, deserts go from being the hottest places in the world to being the coldest places in the world.
Yeah.
So you're likely going to have some kind of like an actual visual hallucination as a result of that, or something that changes what you see. So it's probably just that. It's probably just some.
Yeah, there's something that's just occurred to me while looking at these kind of these kind of spherical light sources. There's something called. Have you ever heard of ball lightning?
No, I haven't.
Ball lightning, as far as I'm aware, is a natural phenomenon that is unexplained by science.
Oh, really?
Or yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's it's kind of unexplained by science, but it's literally these balls of light, and I'm wondering if it's a lot of these things could be attributed to maybe not necessarily lightning, but something similar.
Yeah.
This kind of natural phenomenon of light, be it something gases produced from the ground, or lightning, or I don't know, anything's possible, really, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. There are some people report before earthquakes there are sightings of large light objects in the sky. Actually, I once saw a thing in the sky that looked an awful lot like a face, and this was at about 2 a.m. It was in the summer, and I was in the house by myself yet again. I have like such a terrible mother. She's never in the house. But I was in the house by myself, and one of my mates rang me, and he was just like, "Hey man, come out and look at this thing in the sky." I live in a house that overlooks a valley. Like, there's a valley. If I open my window right now and look out, I see a valley. And my mates, two of my friends, were just sitting on the valley, and I brought some beers out, and we just sat there and looked at this big thing in the sky. I'll put it on the screen right now if I remember. And if you are looking at it, the pumpkin-like images are because I made everything else really dark except for the light, so that altered the way that they look. But I think it looks like a face, and I asked my friends what it was, and they said that they rang the... They said that they rang like Astrology Ireland to figure out what it was, and I was like, "Why do you want your fucking star sign read? Ring Astronomy Ireland, you idiots!" And They never found out what it was, but it's a really interesting. It's a light in the sky. Like it looks like daylight could have been coming up, because sometimes the sun doesn't go all the way down. But like a person with lesser skepticism and cynicism than me would look at that and they could perceive it to be something from the paranormal.
Yeah, definitely.
Shall we move on? Keeping with the subject of lights in the sky, like we said, if you Google lights in the sky in whatever city, you'll find cases of it. I'm sure of it. But we're gonna go to December 1980 right now, and I'm gonna be doing a lot of talking. So say goodbye to Jack. Plus, he's fired anyway, so he won't be back. But Suffolk in England, in Rendlesham Forest. In December 1980, around the 26th and the 27th, there were reported sightings of unexplained lights in the sky. Now, at the time, it was an RAF base in Woodbridge in Suffolk, which was being used by the US Air Force. So I think it's pretty easy to determine what the results, or what was resulting in these lights in the sky, and that was US military aircraft that hadn't been seen by the British public before. Maybe they were a new type of technology and testing. There's plenty of explanations, but to me it's no coincidence that as soon as the US start using this airbase in Woodbridge, that there's reports of lights in the sky. There's a pretty extensive list of incidents that were noted on the Wikipedia page. It's the Rendlesham Forest Incident is what it's called. Rendlesham is spelled like Rendlesham, and that was December 1980. Now that's not really strange, but what is strange is that 2 days later, on December 29th of 1980, all the way over in Dayton in the USA, which is near Texas, the Cache Lundrum incident happened, and this is one of the only UFO related incidents in the history of mankind that's actually resulted in a court case. So around 9 p.m. on this December night in 1980, Betty Cash was driving home from Johnny Cash's first wife, probably was driving home from a diner where she ate with her friend Vicky Landrum and her 7-year-old grandson Colby Landrum. They were driving through narrow roads in the woods in Dayton, and they saw a light in the sky, which they just assumed it was an airplane, and then they continued driving until they saw the light once again, this time much brighter and much closer than it was before, and it was coming from a huge diamond-shaped object in the sky above the trees, about 4 times the size of a car, maybe even 5 times, and this was releasing flames from its base. They stopped the car. They tried to turn the car around, but the road was too narrow, and if they attempted a 3-point turn, they'd end up being in the forest pretty much, because they're surrounded by woodland here. Vicky got out to observe the light, and she was a born-again Christian, and she was sure that it was Jesus coming back and appearing before her, and that she wouldn't get hurt. But they all got out to look at the object. The kid, Colby, who was 7 at the time, was mesmerized and terrified, and he went back into the car. And after that, like, they said it was a silver diamond-shaped object that emitted periodic flames from the base of it, and it had blue LEDs. From this observation, it's really easy for us to be cynical and say, well, they're definitely making that up. But when Colby was in the car, terrified, Vicky got back into the car to comfort him, and the heat that this object was emitting was so strong that when Vicky touched the dashboard of the car, she left an imprint on it with her hand. After that, the diamond rose higher into the air and seemed to fly away, while 23 military helicopters came flying overhead. This all happened over the course of about 20 minutes on the 29th of December 1980, and around 5 months later, a military helicopter flew into Dayton and landed, and there was a lot of people there to see it, like it was some kind of attraction, because it doesn't happen often. And the pilot of it said that he had been just called in to deal with some reports of strange activity. Vicky brought her grandson to see it because her grandson Colby had been traumatized by this whole thing, and he was terrified of helicopters afterwards, but she thought that if he saw a helicopter that was grounded, he'd be able to get a look at it, see what it was, and just move on with his life pretty much. But they spoke to the pilot, and when he found out that they witnessed the diamond thing in the sky, he stopped speaking to them and he told them to leave, and that was that. Shortly after all this happened, everybody, Betty, Vicky, and Colby all suffered symptoms of radiation poisoning, and there's pictures of their burns online. If you Google it, you can see one of them has a huge burn the whole way down her arm. and that all happened in the few days afterwards. So they had nausea, vomiting, and things like that, like basically the symptoms of radiation poisoning, and it all went to court. And there's not a lot of information about how the court case panned out, but the reason that there's so much information about this specific incident is because it did pan out in court, and there is, like, you know, sworn testimony and actual facts based on it. So that's pretty much, for me, the one UFO incident that I cannot really be cynical about. Like, there's, you know, you can say, fair enough, it was a military object that was in testing. That's still fucked up. That's still terrifying. That's not in any way comforting.
This is another thing that is kind of so odd. Like, you know, this giant, I mean, let's take the idea that it's it's a UFO that has been created by the US military.
Yeah.
Right. A diamond. Okay, so it's a diamond, but surely if it was going to be a diamond, it would be lying flat and not. They described it as being, you know, upright.
Upright, yeah.
Really, that's not really a viable flying. You know.
Yeah. How the fuck does that fly?
Yeah. How does that fly? Like, what is it? A fucking giant kite powered by fire? like,
I think Boba Fett's or Jango Fett's spaceship in Star Wars is the closest thing I can come to a diamond thing that flies, and that has the engines are in the back and they emit flame. Maybe it flew off of the flame and that's why it was emitting flames. Like, that's I mean, that's surely possible, right? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
It's all possible.
And then, you know, kind of this group of helicopters kind of swarm it and essentially escort it away.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's fucked
like,
up.
That is so confusing. Like, how do, you know, there's no real way that, you know, you can't usher things through the air, as it were. You know, you can't, like, bump them to make them, you know, move. This massive group of helicopters came in and just ushered this giant fire-spitting diamond, glowing diamond, along on its way, and nobody else reported seeing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's some weird shit going on right there.
They, Lieutenant Colonel George Saran of the Department of the Army Inspector General, he went through a formal governmental investigation into everything that happened, and he couldn't find any evidence that the helicopters the witnesses claimed to have seen belonged to the US Armed Forces. Now, this is just kind of ridiculous because, like, I mean, it's said in the court case and the trial and everything like that that they saw these helicopters. They identified the helicopters after being shown a bunch of helicopter pictures, and they identified it as a CH-47, which was standard military grade helicopter at the time. I believe it was a worldwide one, so you could potentially be looking at an army from another country, but that's highly unlikely that 23 aircraft from a foreign country would fly over US soil and not get any, like, rebuttal because of that, you know? Like, that just doesn't seem to make sense. Plus, there's the whole thing with the pilot that seemed to happen. I couldn't see any reference on that, but I think that if people are going out of their way to make this up, how do you get a 7-year-old to go in on a secret like this? And how do you hurt a 7-year-old and yourself and the other person involved with what is essentially radiation poisoning? Like, ionizing radiation is pretty much what they've been diagnosed with. So that's crazy, you know?
You've pretty much covered everything, like, that is ridiculous about this whole thing. I mean,
another thing about the radiation poisoning is that ionizing radiation, and it says in the Wikipedia article, the rapidity of onset was only consistent with a massive dose that would have meant certain death in a few days, but they lived for years afterwards, and that's, you know, that can be thrown out the window as well. So maybe there's some different type of radiation.
Yeah, I mean, it says on the Wikipedia page, in '98, journalist and UFO skeptic Philip J. Klass found a few reasons to doubt the story. The car was inspected in early 1981, and a Geiger counter was used to check for radioactivity, but there was none found. And presumably also checked for radioactivity at the site he visited, of the incident, and there was nothing abnormal there.
Yeah.
that's that's odd in itself. Radioactivity isn't something that disappears after a couple of days or weeks.
Yeah, and if that were a reason to doubt them, you can also look at the fact that it was a NASA aerospace engineer who conducted that, and he could have just been silenced by the... I'm not implying... Well, I am implying conspiracy here, but I'm also doing it to defend the three witnesses and the fact that they went through what was seemingly a heavy dose of radiation poisoning and survived. And, like, how much of this can you really make up,
Yeah, it does seem a very kind of a shrouded in... conspiracy and kind of the bullshit readings off the chart, really.
Yeah.
Because it all seems very bits and pieces don't kind of add up.
Yeah.
People don't survive all that long with radiation poisoning.
No, absolutely not.
18. One of them lived 18 years, and the other lived nearly 28 years.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
One of them died on the 18th anniversary of when it actually
the 18th anniversary. Yeah, I mean, that all just seems very odd. I suppose the dying on the 18th anniversary is just very nicely coincidental.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't say that it's not something. It's definitely a UFO. If that makes everybody happy, it's definitely a UFO because that's the definition of a UFO.
Yeah.
But as for what it actually is,
fuck knows.
Nuclear propelled kite. I just I don't really understand. There's things don't fly in the shape of diamonds that are upright.
No, they don't.
It just doesn't. I don't know.
We've gone from easily explainable and dismissible to a little bit disconcerting, but nothing to worry about, to slightly disconcerting. Some of it you're able to dismiss, some of it you're not, and now we're gonna go to the things that we haven't got a fucking clue about.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of confusion on our behalf, I think.
Yeah, probably.
The next couple of things.
Yeah, but you have to remember that we're not NASA people. We don't work for them, so...
Yeah.
But we're going to start with the WOW signal, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. For those of you who don't know, the WOW signal is named because it was a narrowband radio signal detected by Jerry R. Eman on August the 15th, 1977. And basically he circled this... He'd been getting... like these signals broadcast to him so that he could check for like interstellar communications from other intelligent life forms, basically. Yeah,
he worked for a company called SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and they've been funded by like a lot of... Carl Sagan was a huge supporter of SETI, and they've been pretty much the leading organization in searching for extraterrestrial life from Earth, using things like radio waves and satellites and stuff like that. So
yeah, the signal bore the expected hallmarks of non-terrestrial and non-solar system origin, and it lasted for the full 72-second window that the Big Ear, which is the kind of like a radio telescope that was being used at the time, was able to observe it. And it's not been heard again, but it's called the WOW signal because he circled a section of the signal or the code and just wrote "WOW!" exclamation point next to it.
Yeah, now, and this is really weird, right? Because it's just a radio thing, a radio frequency or like a pattern, whatever, that just came from fucking nowhere.
Yeah, it's never been repeated. It's never been kind of found again, as it were, and it is kind of odd. It's never really been as far as I'm aware, the whole WOW, the reason for the writing of WOW was never really explained.
It was just the fact that it was so it was just so amazing that it had happened.
Yeah.
Like, he never was expecting to receive a frequency from an unknown location from space or anything like that, and he was just so taken aback by it that he just wrote "WOW!" because this is serious stuff that they need to look at. This isn't just the standard run-of-the-mill information that they gather on a daily basis. This is something completely different and potentially extraterrestrial. Yeah,
I mean, what's always interesting me about this is that it's kind of the idea of communication from an extraterrestrial life form, assuming assuming intelligence, and kind of the way that the code or that the signal was delivered in was kind of indicative of, it wasn't just random. It was clearly, quote unquote, clearly a message or a attempt at communication. But the problem that I've always had with that is that you can say that it's an attempt at communication, but in the massive vastness of space and all that these these radio waves that can be picked up by this big ear radio telescope, enough random events or enough random generations and regions of sounds and waves and stuff like that are going to happen till at one point something is going to seem like it's on purpose.
I think the difference with this one, and I'm not an astrophysicist, and I don't even know if that's what you have to be good at whatever this even is, but if you look at the picture of the WOW signal, you see that the other signals are like 1, 2, 3, and that's pretty much it. And everything in space, that they always record these frequencies in just 1 to 9, and it's very rare that you would get even one that went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because that would just portray a large type of signal that varied so much. But this one is an alphanumeric code. It goes it has hallmarks of nothing that they'd received before. It's not as if they were getting a constant like A B A B A, and then one day they got like a thing that's spelled like ba or something like that. It's like they were receiving just A, and then they got something that spelled fuck you or something like that. It's something that they hadn't seen. There was no precedent for anything like this before, so it's possible that it was sent by extraterrestrials, and it could have been sent by extraterrestrials to extraterrestrials, and we just received it because it bounced off the wrong thing or whatever. But it's definitely a fascinating thing. It's one of those things that I don't think has gained enough attention because of the fact that it is so difficult to understand. I'm a guy who deals with certain frequencies and stuff on a daily basis with everything that I do when I edit music and stuff, but I don't really understand this fully in depth. But I do know that it's the fact that it's so different to anything they'd received before does make it a little bit more significant, even though, like you say, it could just be a completely random thing. But it's so random in the idea that it wasn't really, you know what I mean, it sort of it just came out of nowhere in comparison to all the other ones. And I think that's, I don't know, it there's no real idea of where it came from or what its origin was. But I don't know, the guy who found it himself said that it probably wasn't aliens because they looked for it again and they've pointed things in the same direction. But he thinks that it was just an Earth source signal that got reflected off a piece of space debris, which you have to assume that is definitely likely because there's an awful lot of debris up there. And that's kind of a shame to end on that. But
it is a bit of a shame, but
we'll move on to the Black Knight satellite. Someone actually requested that we talk about this on our Ask FM page, so that's where I got the idea for this from. Now this is an object that's orbiting Earth, and ufologists and fringe authors believe it's approximately 13,000 years old and of extraterrestrial origin. There were photos of the Black Knight satellite that were produced by NASA, and then they deleted them all again, which was really strange. People knew what this was since Nikola Tesla. He found the repeating radio signal in 1899. Now, Nikola Tesla is a really, really important figure in things like this. He was on the cusp of many scientific breakthroughs to do with outer space and things like that. And he said it was coming from space, and then they sort of just retraced it, and they kept on following on what Nikola Tesla said, and there was plenty of evidence, seemingly plenty of evidence, to support the existence of the Black Knight satellite. In February 1960, the US Navy detected a dark tumbling object in orbit of Earth. And they had pictures of it that were put online that, like I said, and then NASA took them offline once again. There was a Scottish writer called Duncan Lunan, who he analysed all this data, and he pointed it in the direction of a constellation that was left of field at, and he decided that it was definitely coming from there, and they were being transmitted from a 12,600-year-old object. And he believed that it was actually a message from a community or a civilization in this far constellation, and it was a welcome to their planet, to the people of Earth, and that we should go and explore there. We don't actually have the means to even fly there at the moment, but there's a lot of doubt over whether or not it actually exists. The only real concrete information I found about it was from listening to Brian Dunning's podcast. He's a skeptic and he likes to debunk things, but he does it in a fairly humble way most of the time. But he's got a podcast called Skeptoid, and it's like 15-minute episodes of things that he's debunking, and he seemed to get to the bottom of the Black Knight satellite, and it was just found that it never really existed in one source in the first place. It was just an amalgamation of many different reports that all just conveniently found their way into one report, and that's where he found it. But there's nothing on the Wikipedia that says that. Obviously Wikipedia isn't a good place to source your information, like everybody knows that, but we're trying to make an interesting show here, so shut the fuck up and deal with it. But so many people have claimed that they've seen it, and so many people have claimed that it's an alien satellite and things, and there are pictures of it on Google that, you know, it looks legit, but there seems to be this, I don't know, like the Wikipedia article ends the opening sentence with, however, it's most probable that the Black Knight is a result of a conflation of a number of unrelated stories, which is, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I clicked through a couple of Wikipedia links and stuff, and there is the idea that it's possible that it's, you know, like a thermal blanket or a piece of thermal tech that's come off an early spacecraft, or come off, you know, something like that, or during, you know, like an extravehicular walk, you know, from the space station and stuff like that. I mean, that's completely possible, you know. It's not unlikely that they've lost something in space.
Yeah, I think the one thing that keeps me grounded with this is that, and I want to say to people, right, that I'm cynical and I'm skeptical, and that's all fine. I don't do it to seem more intelligent than I am. I would love for this to be a real thing. Like I feel like nobody wants it to be real more than me, because I feel like I'm like I kind of mentioned in the last episode, I think, about how interested I am in science fiction, and remember we spoke about traveling through outer space and how cool it would be to have all these worlds that are already built and they already have communities in them, and to explore the different areas of them. I would love for that to be true, and the Black Knight satellite is seemingly a gateway to a possibility, according to like the reports in the 70s, but it just doesn't seem likely. And I think even if there were any possibility that it came from another society, an alien extraterrestrial society, NASA would be following up on that, and SETI would be following up on it, you know?
Yeah, there'd definitely be some other larger body than us talking about it, you know. There's definitely going to be actual important people figuring out what the hell it is, you know. I mean, they're not going to just take the idea that something's hurtling around in space that could be something, you know. Even if they haven't done it above board, they will have looked into going, oh, that's what that is, you know. They're not going to let this supposed alien artifact float around just above in polar orbit, you know.
Yeah,
they're just going to let it happen.
They think that the reported pictures of the Black Knight satellite are actually just the remains of an EVA, which is an extravehicular activity, but it was just, you know, it's just the remains of something that got abandoned in space, because a lot of the time that NASA or whoever goes to space, they do leave things up there sometimes in orbit, and that's just the way it is. Yeah.
Have you ever seen, this is kind of off topic, but have you ever seen that GIF of the, or GIF for those of you that want to be dickheads?
It's GIF, it's pronounced GIF.
Then why spell it GIF?
Because it stands for something.
You've made a new word.
It's an acronym.
Wow. Oh, I don't give a shit.
LOL.
LOL banter.
Or should I say LOL? I love that little dismissive.
There's this GIF of what was actually happening was they were sending out a satellite inside a spacesuit, but without any context. The GIF is this spacesuit floating off and away into the distance, just by itself, away from the space station into space.
Fucking hell.
Like, and you know, I kind of went into seeing that GIF without kind of knowing that it was just a satellite, without the context, and kind of going, holy shit.
Yeah.
Just being left out, floating into space. There was nothing to stop you.
I think it was a Star Trek movie. I think it was the second of a series of Star Trek movies, but it opens up with just a glass bottle just hurtling through space. And it's just such a profound piece of imagery. It's like for about 5 seconds at the very start of the movie, that's all you see is just a glass bottle hurtling through this abyss of, you know, the blanket of black with some stars, and it's just a really, really awesome image. And things like that are just really, really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Like what's out in space and how many different things you see. But in all probability, the Black Knight satellite is a combination of many different seemingly unknown things in space that all just got piled together that have reasonable explanation. So we're going to end it with something that cannot be explained by modern scientists. This is the space roar, and this is when, in the year 2006, scientists were trying to study early stars, but they got faced with this mysterious noise that greatly inhibited their study. They don't know what caused this. It was just this really loud, sort of like wailing kind of a noise. Sounds can't travel through space. That's a thing that everybody knows nowadays. But radio waves can, and that's what they think this is. They think it's radio waves being emitted from outer space, but they don't know where specifically they're coming from. They're 6 times louder than they should be expected, and there's no explanation for why that is either. They've managed to figure out that it's not any radio waves that they currently know of from the early stars themselves or anything like that. Like, you know, they've figured out which radio waves are coming from space and cross-referenced them with this particular noise, and they have no explanation for what this is coming from. There's nothing.
And like, you know, there's a natural background hiss, as it were. You know, there's the natural radio waves that are emitted by stars and celestial objects and stuff like that. But something this loud indicates either something much bigger, or something very concentrated, or, well, I'm just throwing out ideas. These aren't even things that the scientists have put out there as ideas. I'm just throwing out ideas from my own head.
Well, that's the best way to do it anyway.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
But you know, 6 times, it's kind of like, you know, if you listen to it, it is odd. Like, you know, there's the idea of the background hiss from radio waves from stars and stuff, which is present in, you know, every solar system. But then, you know, it's like, it really is a proper roar.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
It's like the start of some kind of really angry movie or something, where you can just feel the tension in it. It's a very tense and disconcerting noise. It's really loud and it's really in your face. It's like an industrial album of instrumental sounds, almost. It's
pretty heavy. I mean, I don't know where I'd even start trying to figure out where it comes from. Like, how do scientists figure this out? Like, surely there's a direction that they're going in, but how far can you trace that sound through the universe to get to its origin, you know?
There is always the possibility that it's coming from Earth, specifically from the bottom of the ocean, in the depths where certain species have been speculated to exist in. It could be their radio waves to communicate with their co-conspirators who exist on other planets, and they're sending these signals out into space, knowing full well that they'll bounce off each other and send humanity on some kind of wild goose chase in order to avoid detection, and in order to just pretend that we won't be alerted to their presence because they are down there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they always say that it's the last place you look, and you kind of you never start by looking right under your nose, do you? I mean, we know plenty of other sea creatures, you know, blue whales, for example. You know, they let out these deep resonance of, these deep resonating sounds that can be heard, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away by other blue whales. Who's to say that there's not other creatures down there that have kind of utilised the same idea and are projecting their own noise and using, almost using the depth of the ocean as kind of like a proper bass, kind of, an amplifier almost.
They are so deceptive, and like you never actually know what they're thinking, and I think that's the scariest part about them, is that they're unpredictable in their nature. Yeah. But I think we're gonna end it here, so stay clear of the space roar and be aware of the sea people, and you should be alright. But if you were affected by any of the issues that we discussed in this show, please do contact 1-800 I have a ghost of the captain of the Titanic in my house.com, because that's how websites work. But sleep tight, everyone.
Power in the verse can stop me.
Oh dear.
Isn't it so funny that we started out with like mysteries and they got scarier and scarier and more real as they went on, and we still ended it with one that we've made up ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's generally how these things go.
I know.
Right,
stop recording.
Yep, so